Guys, I have so many games to play. I have well over 1,000 games on Steam and counting. Plus, I have countless games going all the way back to the Genesis and SNES that I didn't get to play back in the day that haunt me deeply. When am I supposed to get the time to play all of these games? Most of them are RPGs, and RPGs are known to be long games. I could start and finish like a dozen action games before even finishing one SMT game. Gaming is without a doubt my biggest hobby. It's very time consuming though, but I love it. I love my big, fat, long role-playing games, but there is only so much time for all of these 60, 70, 80, 90-hour games. Sometimes when I want to play something, I get this full-on mental paralysis. I find myself staring at my backlog and not knowing what to play. Sometimes I feel that starting up something so lengthy will just take up too much of my time. Sometimes I think of the games that I have started and not finished, and maybe I should actually get back to them, but it's been so long since I played Game X, should I restart it? It's really scary that a hobby can do this to somebody, but it does happen. I've also got real obsessive compulsive disorder, actually diagnosed by a real-life science doctor, but this only really just exacerbates the real issue. I have too many damn games to play. So, I'm Richard for RPG Fortress, and this is my journey into gaming backlog paralysis. It was 1993, a dark and stormy night. Dogs were whining in the alleys, angels were... No, this is way too tragic. It was 1993, it was a moderately warm September afternoon, and your boy was playing Shining Force. After a long period of being a Sega Master System kid, I had finally got a Sega Genesis, and oh boy, was I excited. The game I was waiting to play was Shining Force. I was in love with the mini guide that I got with Game Players magazine, and I just couldn't wait to actually get the real game in my hands. The colorful characters, the huge maps, the wonderful world were all something that really interested me as a young, snot-nosed goblin creature. Shining Force was a birthday gift, and it would be the only game I played until I got a new game at Christmas. Then I would get a new game, and that one game would last me until Easter when I got another new game. Then that game would last me until I graduated the school year and got a new game. And that game would last me until I got a new game on my birthday. A very simple cycle for a kid with no job and no money. I would spend months with a game, just beating it over and over again. Sometimes I would go back to a game I had previously finished to play it again, but I could only play what I had available to me. Then one day I found myself as a young man with a job and all kinds of extra spending money. I can still remember my first paycheck and heading to the local game store, that no longer exists naturally, where I bought copies of Final Fantasy X, Grandia 2, and Orphan Scion of Sorcery, all for the recently released PlayStation 2. I had enough new RPGs to last me for months. Of course, I started Final Fantasy X right away because I was a huge fan of the FF games on the SNES and the PS1. I had technically already played Grandia 2 on a friend's Dreamcast, and Orphan looked it was the least cool looking of the three, so I put those two on the shelf. Then 2 weeks later came around, and despite still being deep into Final Fantasy X, I had another paycheck, and that meant more money, and that meant more games. So I went and bought another 2 or 3 games, and that is when my gaming backlog began. I still haven't played the PS2 version of Grandia, and to this day, I still haven't booted up Orphan, but I'm not really missing much with that one, am I? So this is when my backlog began, and it's been increasing ever since. Just this ever-growing list of games that I need to play. Modern games, retro games, big-budget games, indie games, there is just so much. But what do I do to control this multi-headed Hydra? What weapons and equipment do I use to tackle this thing? Will I ever kill the beast? Well, maybe the beast can't be killed, but maybe it just needs to be held at bay. Number 1, focus on one game at a time. Look, there are a lot of games out there, and more every single day. My first way of tackling my backlog is to focus on one game at a time. It's kind of a no-brainer, but you will finish games faster if you focus on them one at a time. One time, I was going back and forth between playing Fire Emblem 7 on the Game Boy Advance, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance on the GameCube, and a fan translation of Fire Emblem 6 on PC. Those are 3 very meaty tactics role-playing games, and taking turns to play all 3 of them really put a wedge in finishing any of them. So what I do now is I pick out one game that I really want to play, and I just focus on that. Sometimes I'll take a break for a quick game of Tetris, or I'll do a couple of levels in a Mario game, but that's usually just an aside. I know, really big brain stuff, but just playing one game at a time really does work. Number 4, don't keep games I'm not playing installed. Temptation be thy game. No, that's really stupid. Let's start again. Having a load of games installed on whatever system I am playing at the time is no good, because when I see the shiny little icons of the games that I'm not playing, I start going through some sort of crippling internal FOMO about how I should be playing that game right now. So I just delete games that I'm not playing. My Switch literally has 2 games installed right now, Unicorn Overlord and Mario Wonder. My Steam, well, it's time to clean house, so let's delete some stuff right now, baby. Oh my god, look at all this shite. Bravely Default 2, goodbye. Scarlet Nexus, goodbye. Stellaris, okay, let's keep that one. I'll delete you though. Crawl. With your 1 minute of gameplay. Richard, what are you doing, man? Number 3, don't buy new games. Buying new games is really fun. Sometimes just going out and buying a stack of games feels wonderful. Going to a flea market or a pawn shop and finding a big pile of old games that's what I'm talking about. But I had to stop doing it. Even digital sales can get me spending way too much on new games. And this right now, I'm typing this up in the middle of the Steam Spring Sale, and I just got Wizardry, the 5 Ordeals, Legends of Amberland, and Slay the Spire. These are not quick games. What am I doing? But sometimes just the collecting aspect of games is really fun. But then I see a big pile of games on the shelf or in my Steam library, and that crippling paralysis sets in again. Number 2, not enjoying a game? Ditch it. This is something I have only learned fairly recently. Don't like a game? Just stop playing it. It's that simple. Yes, sometimes I do play less than great games for the channel, but that's because I can mine jokes from them. Shining Resonance Refrain wasn't a fun game to play, but I had a real good time dunking on it for the channel. But some games are just irredeemable. I remember back during the PS3/360 era, it was a time of great sorrow if you wanted a console RPG. Infinite Undiscovery, dropped it. Blue Dragon, dumped it. Cross Edge, punted it into deep orbit. Sometimes you can get a lot of fun out of a Kusoge game, but sometimes you just gotta know when to quit. Why dump 300 hours into a subpar RPG because you have to do everything, when you can dump 300 hours into Suikoden and finish it literally 10 times? I would rather play Suikoden 10 times in a row than play Infinite Undiscovery once. And number 1, blog about each game. My last personal way to vanquish the gaming backlog paralysis demon is to blog about the games I'm playing. Since I started the channel, I have found that I am finishing more games than I was in the years when I wasn't. I feel that saying, I am going to play this game for the channel, really lights a fire under my arse to actually finish games. Taking time to clip video, do a little essay, gather music, do research, and interact with members of the community really adds a lot to enjoying a game. I used to keep track of the games I finished in a notepad file, yeah I know, but I have abandoned that as doing content is more rewarding. I know that this is a personal list of things that I do, and it might be a big ask for people to start a YouTube channel, but for me, it really does help finishing games in my backlog. Thanks to the channel, I have finished the original Final Fantasy despite trying to finish it many times over the past 30 years. I have finally finished Trails in the Sky. I have gotten to go back and revisit some of my favorite games that I have ever played, all because of this silly little channel. While the needle on my backlog may not have moved a huge deal due to implementing these tactics, they really do help get through the paralyzing indecision that I feel sometimes when sitting down to play games. And when I sit down to relax and play a game, slowly shifting through a big pile of titles isn't fun. I don't know if any of these strategies would even work for anyone else, but I hope they help someone in some way. And if you have your own ways to combat backlog paralysis, I would really love to hear about them. So leave a comment with details on how you fight the good fight against gaming backlog paralysis. I love games, and I love getting new games, and I love starting games, and I love being an absolute gremlin about games. But I also like finishing games. It just adds a bit of closure to the experience, you know? Seeing a title through to the end is rewarding, especially with big RPGs. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe. If you want to support us for one single solitary dollar a month, please head over to patreon.com/RPGfort. Thank you to Aaron for the patronage. For RPG Fortress, I'm Richard. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to hug a cat. Goodbye.